YouTube says we are live, so I'm going to go with we are live. Welcome to Worldwide Slot Car Chat on Zoom. I'm your host, Greg Gaub. The gang is all here with Tony and Mike and Jeremy and Wayne and John and Don and other Johns and other non-Johns, and the rest of the crew will probably show up shortly. Let's start with show and tell. If anybody has anything that they're ready to show and tell, by all means, raise your virtual hand or raise your real hand, and we'll get to you. I don't think I have anything to show and tell this week, so it looks like we might be going straight to Club Corner. You want to do something, Jeremy?
I've got the most exciting thing you've ever seen.
We love it.
No, I'm just kidding. It's not. I just upgraded my roller to follow what Courtney showed. So I was like, oh, there you go. Now I made a roller, but with ball bearings in there.
Very nice.
Yeah, exciting. All right.
So they're harder then. Fair amount harder than what was there before.
Yeah, it's a lot harder than plastic, and then the weight feels a little better when you're rolling. It just seems to bounce less. So, and they're the right width. So, I know, exciting news. I thought Jim Rose had some new stuff he was making too. Maybe he's not ready.
Yeah, he did post a couple of things, but he's not here yet, so
all right.
He'll probably pop on later and show us.
Well, thanks to Courtney for that.
Great suggestion, yeah. Double checking if I had anything. I'm not in the right place to look for it. And since nobody else has any show and tell, does anybody want to talk about racing? I'll talk about racing. We just had our first race of the NSR GT3, GT4, Modern GT, whatever you want to call it, series with IMSA. The spec is essentially stock, except tuner screws are allowed. Suspension is allowed, but the motor must be replaced with the 17K Baby King NSR Baby King motor. Stock tires, trued and glued, blah blah blah, all the rest of the stuff. A little bit of ballast allowed. As per last week, I might have mentioned that my AMG was the best running car of my group without having done any work to any of them. So I just ran that car because I haven't done any work to any of them still, and I managed to get a third place. But we run crash and burn, so some of that was due to some better racers
crashing,
falling out, or getting knocked out. One of them was probably partially my fault, if not entirely my fault. Basically, at the end of the turn, at the end of the longest straight, he was trying to pass me, so of course I'm trying not to let him pass me, and I probably slid a little bit more than I intended to, and he was no longer in the slot after that. He was not a happy camper because that was fairly early on in the heat. So that helped me, but unintentional. So I don't like being helped like that, but it's part of racing. Otherwise, my car performed fairly well. They're great cars just in general. So good series. It should be good. We raced for IROC. We raced. This was at Roger's house, which I've talked about this before. But we raced his Joker set of IROC cars. It's basically 4 Scalextric, 2000s F1 cars, and they're all the exact same car. They're all the exact same livery car. Blue and yellow, so that's nice. I like that. But they are literally all the exact same car. The only difference is he had stuck lane stickers onto them, so he remembered which lane the cars go in, because otherwise there's no unique identifier, which of course caused problems. People driving the wrong car because they weren't paying attention to, the accuracy of their trigger and the response of the car. And it didn't help much that the cars had very, very poor traction, because he had taken the magnets out and the tires were stock Scalextric tires, which, you rub your thumbs on them, they actually felt like they had okay grip, but on the track they were just absolutely ice skating around. So after the first few heats, most of the cars were just, they looked like they were on ice, literally. So most of the guys are driving very, very conservatively, very, very easy on the throttle, letting up super early because they're just going to coast forever, keeping them from sliding around the turns too much and just sliding completely out. So it wasn't hard for somebody to be looking at the wrong car, but not realizing that their trigger motions were not directly connected to that car because they were so sloppy to drive in the first place. So one of the guys he came out in like second or third turn, and he's like, "Oh, glad I got out of that." But it was his car that had come out, and he's driving the other guy's car around the track. And I'm like, "Hey, dude, you're driving the wrong car." He's like, "Crap." So that's always fun for those guys. Anywho, that's the end of my time-wasting speech. Jim has put his hand up. What would you like to talk about? We're already in Club Corner because there wasn't any show and tell. But if you have a show and tell you'd like to do, by all means, feel free to start off with that.
Yeah, I wasn't quite ready. So when you're retired and got too much time on your hands and bought a 3D printer, you do other stuff. So this is the latest project. It's just a tire run-in machine. I don't have the parts for it right now, so those are mock-ups. Those are plastic bushings and plastic wheels, but they're the same size. They'll be replaced with bronze bushings, and it's an NSR fly truck wheel that's 17 by 14 with a flat surface. So that's going to be my the rolling bed on this particular machine. Or you can take it off and put tires on all four, or just two. And so it's designed to do whatever you want to, whether you want to run in tires, you want to oil in tires, you name it. The prongs on the front are for the leads, because I was going to do this with a 9-volt, but then figured 9 volts might be a little bit too much power for that, and you really want a variable supply for this type of thing. So I just ran the leads from the wire down through the box and then back up through the copper posts. So I thought it looked a little cleaner than the wires just hanging out. And there's the business end of it. It uses a standard slotted inline gear setup. So you just take this right out of you do have to reverse the motor because it's screwed in from the back. Typically the pinion's on the other side. So you have to take the pinion off, put it on this side, and then it just goes together like a slotted pod. And that is self-centering. Just glue the bushings in. You won't have any problems with it, I don't think. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this. I built it for me. And so at this point in time, that's about it. So we'll see.
I saw there were some suggestions on the Facebook posts, aside from mine, for how to do things. And yeah, that's I say it all the time, but that's part of the fun of the 3D printing hobby is the modeling. So anybody out there who got a printer and you're just downloading stuff, hop on Tinkercad and start messing around.
I did steal something for that. I don't see Brian on here, but remember the Worldwide Slot Car Chat proxy race?
I remember we were talking about it.
I used the motor pod, or I modified it quite a bit, but I used the motor pod instead of having to measure everything and do prototyping on that. So thanks, Brian, for the basic rear end of the motor pod. Even though when I downloaded that file, there was a couple of mistakes in it. I'm not sure if Brian was aware of it. The crown gear hole does not line up with the axle holes. It's offset. So when you put the crown gear in, it hits on the back and not on the front because it's not in the center. It should be directly below the center line of the axle, and it's not. So I did have to fix that, but not a big deal. It hit so lightly that it wasn't. You could work with it, but it wasn't correct. So anyway.
What's the big benefit of running your tires on there? You're just running them dry?
Yeah. Yep.
And what do you gain from that?
Just like running them in on a track, sort of, for 50 or 60 laps. Just kind of bedding them in. It's kind of like when in NASCAR, when they go in and they run in a set of tires. So they run scuffs instead of stickers. So with our tracks, the scuffs work better. Stickers don't work good. So run them in for 50, 60 laps. And this, I haven't tried it yet.
So are you saying a tire truer finish you can't get to work well on the tracks
No.
immediately.
The tire takes about 50 or 60 laps to run in.
Yeah.
And theoretically, I mean, the hope is that this will reduce that process.
Yeah.
We'll see.
It works for silicone. I know you guys don't race silicone, but you've got to break those in a lot of laps before you get like the weird sheen off of them and they start working just a little bit better.
Yeah, and the easy part about building, I thought about, where do you get an aluminum roller? I know Jeremy has them. I didn't talk to him about a source, but I just figured, I looked on the NSR catalog and they make it's 14 millimeter wide, 17 millimeter diameter, flat surface wheel.
Yeah.
So it
Intended
works
for
just
foam
like-
tires, probably.
I'm sorry?
Intended for foam tires, probably.
No, actually, it's intended for fly trucks,
Oh, is it?
but it's still in their catalog and it fits perfect. It's 14 millimeter wide. It's
Yeah.
plenty. 17 is the perfect diameter and they're readily available. And then you can take it off and put tires. You want tires on the top and bottom. Like somebody suggested putting foam tires on the bottom to hold the oil, which we don't do anymore, but that was a good suggestion that he made if you
Yeah.
are oiling the tires. So you have the options as opposed to having a full roller on there.
Yeah, the tire oiler that I was designing for a while and stopped was using foam rubber tires to do the oiling. But it was specifically an oiler, so.
Yeah, if I was specifically oiling tires, I would use the same tire on the same pair of tires on the one on the top and one on the bottom. I think that works better in getting the oil broken into the tire. You have to sit there and keep reapplying the oil, but I think it works better. But the foam's a good suggestion too.
All right, good stuff. Jim, anything else?
That's it.
All right, Mike, you ready?
Yeah, I got to share. So, pardon my finger. Oh, come on. Okay. Right. This was the first race that we had. We had two this week as usual. The first one we did were British touring cars. So I had two hot hatches, a Renault Megane, and a BMW 125, and then I had a BMW 330 as the outlier of the group. It's still a BTCC car, but it's much bigger and slower. I ended up not getting fast time for the qualifier, not getting pole, but I won the race in convincing fashion. It was the other good. The Megane was pretty strong, and Shiggy was a little heavy-handed with his technique, and that caused quite a bit of a problem. And Joel had a lot of trouble with the BMW. I had set faster laps with both of the hot hatches when I did my testing, so they were at least 2.5 tenths faster overall. And I thought, well, I'll take the slowest car and see what I can do. And I beat them solidly, which was unusual. And then the second race, oh, wait, did it go? Did I knock everything over? As you can see, Joel picked up his first win. I've been giving him a fuel advantage overall because he falls off a lot. So I wanted to give him at least a chance to do it. And as you can see, for the most part, it was a pretty even race, except it was group fives. So I had the Ford Capri Zach Speed, which is always problematic with little tail swinging, and I had a lot of trouble with ghost cars getting ghosted. A little tap would send that thing flying, and I had a number of times where I was just tapping just a little bit and off I went. So I had problems with that, and Joel managed to take it home. So in true fashion, the winner is losing some of his fuel advantage. So he had a bigger tank and a better fuel rate for that particular car. So The times were relatively even when we did qualifying, so I took top qualifier, but not by much. But the cars were really pretty even. There was my Capri, and then Joel had a BMW 320, and God, I can't remember which he had. At any rate, it was a good race. It seesawed back and forth between the three of us leading, and although the end race wasn't as close as we thought it was, but it seemed pretty close. So it was good fun. We had a good time. The other thing is I've got let me stop my share. I forgot I had a show and tell. Let me grab the screws here and I'll disassemble to show you. I don't know if you remember, I talked a little bit about the Ferrari 296 Carrera that I had gotten that was, fairly heavy, but people had said that it had potential because the weight wasn't that bad for a Carrera. And what I've done here, I don't know if you can see this. If you look, you can see that it's almost a flat plate. I have removed all of the extraneous stiffening that goes on with most Carreras, and it's actually a much better car that way. The normal is like close to 1/4 inch high stiffeners along the chassis there, and this is a result of most of my working with Garth's chassis and trying to figure that out. Whereas on the Maserati, I've taken the stiffeners off the side there. You can see where it's done, as opposed to this where it's raised. And
has that made it bendy, Mike?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's made it quite bendy.
That's twisty.
Yep.
What about bendy? Oh Christ. Yeah.
Don't put a magnet in there.
But it works.
He's got one. It's got his motor.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's in the back, and the back is solid.
Yeah, but the motor's still pulling ahead of the tires.
Yeah, that's true.
And that will cause the rest of it to curve.
Yeah. Yeah, it was an experiment, but it worked.
It might work. It might be working. It might be working whilst you're running high enough. If you get your motor close to the rails, because the motor's pulling the rails ahead of the tire contact patch.
Yeah.
In fact, the chassis is bound to bend between there and the front wheels. Between the front of the motor and the front wheels. Because that car's not got a pod. It's actually marginally. It's actually already softer than a car that has, because a pod tends to be almost infinitely stiff. Not literally, but as good as infinitely stiff.
Right.
And I've had problems with a car that bent between the motor pod and the front, and it was dragging the track with the chassis.
Okay. So far, I have not had a problem with that. My ground clearance is about a little bit less than a 3/4 of a millimeter, or a little bit more than 3/4 of a millimeter. So 0.8, something like that.
Yeah. That's underneath your motor?
Yeah.
Oh, you're too high then?
Well, for a bumpy scale-electric track, it seems
that's
lower.
You see, scale-electric rails are pretty much flush until you talk about where the joints curve.
Yeah.
So is that about as low as you can go then? 0.8?
No, I could go lower if I wanted. But it becomes problematic because, excuse me, what happens is that on some of the portions of the track where I have a little bit of an angle on it, it's cambered somewhat.
Yeah.
it will cause problems that way. So consequently, I've just evolved this methodology, and I just fooling around with those chassis and stuff like that, and it does seem to have worked. I mean, the 296 is the fastest Carrera car that I've got with the modifications that I've made.
Would you like me to show you my one?
Sure.
Chassis, I mean, obviously.
Sure.
While you're
other-
digging that out, I wanted to mention that Scalextric's go-karts, were so flexible with such strong magnets that stock they would get stuck to the track and not move, not be able to push themselves.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah,
The
trust
whole-
me, I'm familiar with that from all my magnet experiments as a magnet racer.
They work much better with magnets.
Yeah, I rejected Thunderslot cars totally when I first started doing it because they were useless with a magnet in them. Those chassis are so twisty and bendy and everything that I still to this day like, how the hell do they work? Well, they do. Everybody knows Thunderjets go. So
Thunderslots.
anyway,
Yeah.
that's what prompted me to do all this experimentation.
Well, this is my one. Basically, it's a 3D printed chassis with a slotted motorpod in it.
Yeah.
And you can probably see some raised portions here.
Yeah.
On the chassis. So it's got slightly raised, they're opposite. So it's got thickness along its edges. But if I hold it like this and bend it for you,
Yeah.
and I'm not having to put much force into that. And then what I found was I got a black line between the back of the guide and the front of the motorpod, all the way down there.
Interesting.
And that was picking up dirt from the rails.
Yeah.
It had other issues. It started to touch the track here and here, in particular. And at the time, you see the marks on the red tape? I
Yep.
couldn't get that happening at all. I apologise for the car alarm in the street.
Can't hear.
I couldn't get that to happen at all, but I had to make significant modifications in terms of moving the motor down in the motor pod, because it's a 1mm offset pod, but I've modified it and it's way more now. And then I shifted all the plastic work up. I'd now lifted I had bigger wheels. The motor pod had gone up. All the plastic work had gone up about the chassis because the only parts that were the right height anymore was the motor and the tires, you know. So this one caused us a lot of dilemma trying to get it on the pace. As soon as I did what I did, lowered the motor, enlarged the tire diameter, and made these two parts the only parts that were anywhere near the track, it started to work.
Mhm.
Obviously, I readjusted the front axle and readjusted the guide and all of those things. But yeah, that one is something that I don't think I'll run again. I'll benchmark with it because it's the only chassis I've got that fits under a given body shell at this moment. But I won't race that again. It's just too bendy for me. I mean, it's nice enough in twist. It's quite soft like you showed. Not very soft. Probably not as soft as the one you showed. But I don't mind that. I just don't like that. You can just see how easy it is. It doesn't do that much on the track, but you know, I don't like what you've done. I mean, I like it while it runs high, but if you get it low enough to be at risk of touching the motor on the rails, then you're in.
Yeah. Well, and you do it mainly for the magnetic downforce,
Of course.
which you want to do. So.
Yeah, and
I
you
think
want
all
the
of this
same. The
stuff
problem
will
you've got is
change.
that you can't get your motor down low enough to be striking the rails,
Right.
or even your highest ones. You know.
Yeah.
It's okay for that to happen. That is optimal for me. Just click. You know, just a certain corner or a certain joint that you'll just click every lap. That's absolutely perfect.
Well, the problem is with the bumpiness of the Scalextric track is so severe that you have to be careful that you allow enough clearance that you don't end up hitting chassis in the middle of a corner.
So your banked corners, I'm presuming when you have
not just the bank corners, some of the flat ones too, it will be wavy enough that you can get it to to hit there. But yeah, mainly the bank corners. Yeah.
Is it not right? Is it not the case that in your bank corners, it's actually the front and back of your chassis that's touching the chassis, touching the track?
No. Well, it will end up for some reason. I don't know whether it's the way the those particular tracks bend or whatever it is. I end up grounding out at the rear.
At the
It'll
rear.
ground out at the rear and then slide out, of course.
Because I'm aware of circumstances where Carrera cars won't go round Carrera banked corners.
Mhm.
Because even at their stock ground clearances, because of the nature, the bank is like you've put the car in a bowl,
Right.
and it'll run
Yeah.
on the nose and it'll run on the tail.
That's because those banks are high banks. Those are
Yeah, I realise
Yeah.
that what Mike's got. You've made your banks out of, or your off camber, no, with
Just
camber
using
corners
shims.
out of flat track, yeah? Yeah. So I know that we're talking about a completely different radius and a different problem.
At any rate, with this,
Interesting.
it was interesting to me to eliminate all the stiffeners in there, and there's still plenty stiff platform in the Carrera car. So
Yeah.
I'm going to work on trying some of my other. It's a total pain in the ass, and of course, Carrera cars need so much work anyway to be decent
Race
for
cars.
me. So that they have their own separate class. But the modifications I did, and it was a fair amount of work as far as dremeling the body out and stuff like that. You can see I did a fair amount of dremeling at that point. You can look inside there. So
Yeah, that's
that's
starting to look
not
competitive.
outrageous. And I haven't put the interior yet in, but that's just going to be a flat card stock. But it meant I had to grind out all the pieces on the inside, which is total pain, and a lot of work for the cars themselves. But it did bring them in competition with some of the better scale X-Rick cars that I've got. So that was a surprise. The other thing that I did that was interesting is that I don't know if most people, if you can see the chassis here, you look at the guide assembly. What I have done here is taken the guts of the guide out and used a piece of tubing, of brass tubing in the center, drilled out the center of it, and put the guide in. The tubing fits the guide. So I've used a standard guide to fit it. In this case, it's a really long guide, but I haven't trimmed it yet. But if you look, I've got that sort of T-shaped piece there in the center is the stock mounting part with the guts removed from the bottom of it with the guide assembly. So for a piece of tubing, and I know Slot Invasion sells a proprietary piece that they've machined to fit in that. I just drilled the thing out and put the piece of tubing in and screwed the top part of it back in and used a regular Slotting Plus guide on it. And it works a treat. The only thing you have to do, you see the little holes I've drilled there with the drum screws in them? Those are the guide limiters.
Mhm.
So the guide will hit that. If you don't put those in, it spins the guide around, which is interesting.
Yep.
So, but that was a cheap fix for replacing the guide, and mainly because I didn't have one of the glue-in pieces that you get from Slot Car Corner. They have a glue-in piece that fits in that diameter hole that's in there that will replace that, so you can use the standard guide. But this was a quick and dirty fix. I had the piece of tubing, it worked, and it ended up being quite good. So I need to get the inserts in. I haven't been able to find any inserts that are appropriate for the wheels, which look like this section here. There's 6 spoke. So anyway, that's my show and tell and my racing. So that's all I got.
I wonder if the sideways car has the appropriate inserts.
Yes, it does. The new Sideways 296. Yeah, I'm going to purchase one of those because I've got a full complement of GT3 sideways. I don't know why they haven't brought out the Lexus yet, because I would love to have that. I don't like the looks of it especially, but it would be a different car. So I've got one of mostly each of the sideways the cars, and I love them. They're wonderful cars to drive, and they're all pretty even. So they're good cars. So I expect the 296 will be a nice car. I also got the 488 going on.
You could probably get the inserts as spares.
Yeah, that's my plan. I noticed that they should be coming out soon. It looks like, because they've got 3 different liveries out. I think some of the manufacturers what they're doing is, at least they're trying to copy Revoslot, where Revoslot will come in with 3 different liveries right off the bat. So you have competitive cars, the same car. And that way you can sell more cars really that way, if you've got the 3 different liveries. So hopefully that'll be coming soon, and I can pick up the one I want. And I generally buy only one of them anyway, so I'm not into collecting the more than one, regardless of whether it's the quote fastest car of the bunch. But I like to have different grids for my races every time I race. I sort of abhor having the same ones every time. So, which is the reason I have so damn many cars, is because I have many different iterations of a GT3, and still have them fairly competitive. So it's fun that way for me. Okay, that's all I got.
Good stuff. Floor is open. Anybody want to talk about anything slot car related? Go ahead, Jeremy.
Okay, let me share something here. Hopefully you're seeing a spreadsheet.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So we had races out at Stanwood, Iowa, and for the first time I got to try this new race format we used, which I've been advocating for now. If you're familiar with NASCAR Wood Slot Car Club in Watford, or the Mosley Slot Car Club, I guess they both use the same kind of format. And so what it is you have races that will start with a heat list, and it's European rotation. So first heat races, and you start at the line. I think I've talked about this before. You start at the line, 15 laps, you move, somebody comes off, somebody comes in, everybody again starts back at the line. There's no moving around, finding your tokens, none of that stuff. So we had heat races all day. So you can kind of go, oh, I had a heat win, that was nice, but it may not have won you the whole race. And then the computer, because the computer's smarter than we are, it can go back and look at all of the race results, and say looking at the 3-minute mark where the places were, like the orange driver here was in first place. These guys were trading back and forth for the race. And then the race comes to an end, everybody hits 60 laps except for this guy here. His car, I think it lost a wheel, and so he timed out, and he didn't quite get to the end, but it still put everybody in order by time. So the guy who did 60 laps the fastest was the winner that day, and I couldn't be happier. Like we finally got to test it and prove whether or not it works. Everybody seemed to like it, and I think the next race the guy said he's going to use that format as well. So we might have 3 of our tracks now converting to what I think is a more updated modern format. So
is that using,
and other exciting news?
Is that using Race Coordinator?
Yeah, it's using Race Coordinator. I think it can be done with what's the other one? TrackMate, something. I think any format can do it. It's just you have to think about how you set it up. And then, I mean, for me, the big thing is, like, there's always laps of shame, but his track here didn't have individual power relays. So nobody realized the laps of shame were going on because the top guys were just still racing as fast as they could, while the other guy was still coming around, and he triggered the end of the race, and then they had to go grab their cars. And I realized that kind of slowed things down, because they had to go, have somebody grab their car, bring it over to them. Where when the cars stop at the line, you always know where the car is. It's a little faster and speeds things up. Yeah, it's just easier to start and stop at the line every time, every race, every day. So there's no bumping around, shuffling around, just one of those slight tweaks you can make. I mean, you only pick up, 10, 15 seconds, but you do that for every race. You know, you're picking up a few minutes, and it just seemed to flow a little better, in my opinion.
So without individual power relays,
Yeah.
the fast guys were still running around while the other guys finished their final laps.
Yeah.
What caused them to be all at the line at the end of the race when the last guy crossed the line?
Well, they once they hit 15 laps, you know, it said winner,
Okay,
but
so
it had to wait for the last guy he was on lap 14. So
Yeah.
they kept going around the track, and he finally comes around. And then once the race is over, once all 4 drivers have ended their race, the software shuts the power off. But those guys that were ahead might be, you know, on the other side of the track, you know, coming back this way, and then they just
Yeah.
gotta go grab their car. It doesn't count for anything. They're still just moving, but it's just psychologically nobody realized, oh, there's laps of shame going on here. Because when the cars all stop, then everybody notices, aha, you're making up 2 laps, or you know what I mean? I think
but-
that's what did it.
So the cars were still wherever they ended up when the power finally cut, but it didn't matter because it's
Right.
based on how fast they got their set number of laps. They still had to go and get their car to start the next heat at the line,
Yeah.
but it just didn't. They didn't have to worry about putting markers in.
At the other track where I first tested it out, his individual relays stopped the car at the end of, and so guys would just walk there and grab their car. And while the laps of shame guys still were driving around, so it was like you'd only see 1 or 2 cars on the track then. And I think that psychologically, I think that made people not realize what was going on, and they realized, oh, this format does work. Okay. So, and then the best part was no computer to estimate your laps, nobody walking around and forgetting where their token was and putting it back here. And or one big thing is when you do that distance racing, sometimes the computer estimates a segment, but in the real results, the other guy's ahead. And then you got to come back and try to edit the software. None of that. And the computer put everything in one spot. And once the race was over, we knew exactly where everybody stood. There was no flaws. I loved it. So anyway, that's it.
Good to hear.
And heat races to me are exciting. So I don't know why they're more exciting because sometimes when I'm doing that distance racing, I'm just racing myself because I don't know where I'm at. I'm halfway through the race. I might be ahead. I might be behind. I don't know where I'm at. So I liked it.
Yep. That's a perfectly valid race format.
Exciting.
Just trying to get a club that's, set in their ways to change is really
Well,
hard.
the one thing I've learned is that old guys do not like change. So
No.
good luck. They do not like it.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Old guys don't like change, Jim.
Yeah, let's try and get Jeremy to do digital and see what happens. Then he can talk about old guys not wanting to change.
Well, I did do digital. I got digital. I did it. They didn't want to do that either. There's no way I can spoon feed them a digital race, though. That's the problem. I can slowly get things in other ways, but not digital.
Yeah.
Have you got them doing fuel yet?
No, I tried that once. It was too confusing. So that'll be next. I'll do that on a special event, maybe.
That's the closest thing. That's the closest thing to digital that most of these guys. And now that we have 2 tracks that can do the fuel now. Bill's polycar track, he used a setup that allows him to do the fuel just like Russ's track. So when we race at Bill's, it's same as when we race at Russ's with fuel and everything. So that's nice, but that's about as close as these guys get to digital. When I have them race on my track as digital, it's literally just the same everything except multiple cars per lane. I'm not making them do fuel. I'm not making them worry about tires or anything like that. I'm like, I'm not going to have these guys try to pull into the pit lane.
Well,
no.
I don't want. I tried it once, and when you get to, I explained, here's the light bridge. Pull your car anywhere underneath the light bridge, and it'll start refueling. And that was like, some guys are like, what, where, how, huh?
Intentionally stop my car in the middle of the race?
Stop right there. Yeah, right there. So it was too much. Yeah. We'll get there.
Yeah, and I love the heck out of it because it's closer to digital than regular analog is. So I usually do pretty good because I'm tracking my fuel and not, blasting through the stop that I should be making. Most of the other guys do a pretty good job at remembering that, but it's one of those running gags where, people are just going through without stopping for fuel because they just forgot.
Do they have is the power still on with if you run out of fuel and it just doesn't count laps, or
Shuts
or
down.
does it stop the car?
If you have individual lane controllers, it'll shut that lane down. Or you can tell it to, now you can tell it to intermittently turn on and off, so your car kind of limps back to the start.
That'd be cool.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, or there's a third option is where you can, when you lose fuel, you're just not counting laps anymore. So some guy might be driving and realize, wait, why am I not getting laps? What I like about it for fun is that when your club has a wide variety of guys, guys that are always at the bottom, guys that are always winning, it kind of helps narrow that field, because the super fast guys, they're burning fuel so much faster than the guys that are just kind of putzing around. So I think it makes it a little more closer and exciting, but I don't know. Other people don't agree.
I agree. Shiggy whined a little bit this week about using so much fuel all the time. He says, it's the way you're driving, Shiggy.
Yeah, slow it down.
And there's been some discussion about how the fuel is measured on the forum there, which I found interesting. I actually really like the way PC Lap Counter does it, because it gives you very small increments that you can adjust it just a little bit to give someone a slight advantage. And that's how Joel won this race. I mean, this week, it's the first win that he's had since he's been coming here for about, I don't know, 8 or 9 months, something like that. He's been in the mix, been second a couple of times or thereabouts, but it gave a chance for someone who is not as fast and not as savvy about the stuff to at least have a fighting chance. And yeah, it does involve me taking a little bit of a hit on some of it sometimes, but I win more than my share of races on my own track. So
that's really a good thing, though. Like especially when you're trying to get more people involved in the club, like when the top guys just win every week, then you're at the bottom and you're just like, you're fighting for scraps. But even if you have to artificially change that fuel percentages and get more people closer or involved, I mean, like if you come in third place and you haven't ever got to third place before, you're like, oh, wait, what? And you're going to be more interested, I would think, than just being back at the bottom again. And yeah, it's artificial, but the top guys in the club know that it's artificial. They're like, well, if you get to change the rules, I'm still dominating and I'm still getting my 60 laps in or whatever. So it's just a mindset that the top guys have to go, okay, let's see what happens if some things are out of my control. But it's not like we're racing professional races in our basements here. It's all for fun. So
well, one of the things that's turned me off with the 124th races that I've done is there's money involved. You're paying $10 a shot.
No, where?
And the people that win more money. I mean, there's actually prize money at the end. So for me, as a person that's not that quick as far as a trigger finger and eyes, I've never had good eye-hand coordination at all. I'm perennially off the back. And if I have to spend, for instance, on a slot, I'm spending $30 to do it, and I have no return at the end of that. So I'm just paying $30 to give to someone else while racing. Now, yeah, I could up my game, but there's only a certain amount I can do to increase that. So
are they doing cashback or gift certificate?
Yeah, cashback.
Cashback.
Yeah, the guy who runs the track, he'll sometimes dump in $100 for like the weekend races that we do once a month. And, so there'll be a purse payout on like that. And of course, once you get money involved, man, it gets cutthroat.
Yeah, I'm totally against that personally.
It's stopped some of the interest for me. But like you said, trying to get those guys to change their systems. We can't even get them to do a breakout lap race where you have a set time that you can't go under or your lap doesn't count. man, there was so much hue and cry because the guys that were fast were not getting their laps. They were so pissed. It was just like unbelievable. So it takes some of the fun out of it for me. And ideally this should be fun. It should not be a cutthroat deal.
And I kind of think that when club members are willing to basically be handicapped in order to allow other members to, be up there in the running, it gives people a sense that those members are not so adamant about winning, right? That they're going to be jerks about it. That, if you allow yourself to be handicapped, then the people who are benefiting from your handicap are like, well, what a nice guy, or at least he's not, pitching a fit and raising a stink about it, so it fosters a more inclusive and encouraging environment, even if that's not the intention, fundamentally that is kind of the intention, so that the newbies, feel like they're accomplishing things before they would normally have accomplished them with no handicapping at all.
Yeah, you can do that several different ways too, because the software does different options. Like you can do a points race, and you get 4 points for a first place win. If you're racing against the weaker drivers, you're one of the weak drivers, and you get 4 points. And the top guys have all 4 of them go against each other. Only one of them getting 4 points, and then you can adjust that through the software. And the top guys are still going to dominate, and they're still going to be faster than everybody. But you can use the points to artificially kind of keep the standings closer, because you don't want a spread of like the top guy in the club has 100 points and the bottom guy has 3. And you're like, what? Why am I even showing up each week? This is because when you look at that, you start to realize, oh God, I do suck. I'm never going to get better. But I don't know. It just, to me, it seems like we have the technology and we need to be using it a little more. And the top guys are still going to get their 60 laps or whatever, and they're still going to dominate. And then when we have a real regular race, you're still going to get, whooped on. But at least there's those brief hints of you get small victories, and it, I think it makes you want to come back and go, oh yeah, I had that feeling. I got to win. Perfect. Come back.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. Who knows?
I think you're right. I mean, there's tons of ways to do it. Like Luff has talked about his method where bring whatever car you want, race whatever car against what the other cars you want. His system takes account for how fast your laps are, and basically puts the guys who go slower ahead at the beginning of the race, so that by the time the heat is over, everybody is more or less finishing at the same time. So if you race consistently, if you can run laps, within tenths consistently, then you're just as likely to win as the other guy who does the same thing but faster, right? He could be half a second faster than you, but if he's less consistent, then where he gets set back to due to the speed of his laps won't give him that finish at the on the line like everybody else. It rewards consistency basically, and then there's
It also makes the person able to realize that he was in front for a while, and also put himself under pressure to make sure that he actually does it. Excuse me. He actually stays consistent regardless of who's coming up gangbusters behind him. And there again, it emulates real racing, which I think is a good thing.
And I think Steve had a racing system where they were similar to Luff, except they all started on the line at the same place, but like fuel stops were longer for the faster cars. Yeah. So with some calculations, letting the computer do all the work based on lap times, they started and ended at the same time pretty much, based on their slightly longer pit stops and stuff. So there's tons of ways to do it, but it seems like the clubs that do anything could do anything, whereas clubs that don't want to do any of them would never do any of them, right? So like, if there's somebody in the club or multiple people that are just so hard lined against any kind of handicapping or whatever spin you want to put on it, that it doesn't matter what method you choose to do it. They're just going to be like, no, I want to drive the fastest car as fast as I can, and I want to be ahead of everybody as far as I can because I'm the fastest car. That's the only thing they care about, is being ahead and being fast. So those are the kind of
Now,
people that discourage newbies.
Jim Rose races at like a professional place on a weekly basis or regular basis. Do they have any compensation for like that, or they just say, get out there and do your best?
Well, we've done a couple things. One, we did a Revo slot. We have two classes. We have amateur and pro or expert. We have two classes of drivers. In one race, the experts were required to run the Group 2 Revo slot, and the amateurs were allowed to run the GT Revo slot. Because when we looked at the lap times in the two groups, they were really close. The experts with the slower car and the amateurs with the faster car. And I thought it was great. An amateur won. I think I finished third or fourth. Another expert finished fifth with a sedan. I thought it was a blast. In general, for me, it's still racing. And I think I like what Greg just said, that he doesn't like. I get it. Fast guys are the fast guys, they should win. But I like doing things that allow other people to compete and win. So I'm not against that. They do bracket racing or breakout racing, which I totally hate, but they do that in their 24 scale program. And it seems to be fairly popular. So, we've never done it in 32nd scale, so maybe we should try it sometime, but that's what they do there. But I did really like the two classes with the faster drivers running the slower cars.
How do they determine if you're pro or amateur? Just by your speed, or?
It's by result. If you start winning in amateur and you're winning with times that would put you probably in the top 5 in pro. I keep saying different names because they changed the names from amateur and expert. So anyway, if you're winning the lower class and your times are starting to get comparable to the slower, faster class, then they'll move you up. So if let's just say nobody shows up one time and you win the lower class, but you're 50 laps behind it, that really doesn't count. So it's kind of a 2 or 3 of us get together and say that guy needs to move up, basically. But it's not just based on result. It's based more on how fast he is or she.
And consistent.
And we right now what we do, we run 3 classes in a day. The first class is straight up. We do qualifying, and the heats are sorted by qualifying no matter what class you're in. The second race of the day is a round robin, but the amateurs and the experts run separate. So the winner of the amateur round robin is the winner. It's not bunched up with everybody else. And then the third race of the day for time saving is just a big round robin with everybody no matter what. So one's based on performance of the day, one's based on your class, and one's just a free-for-all, so to speak. So that's our format now. It's worked out pretty good.
I'm gonna bitch and moan a little bit about the way that Marco runs the nationals. Presumably he does this same format for most of the things, but at the slot at nationals, the way he did it was all 75 racers took their turn to do, whatever, 1 minute or whatever it was to get your fastest lap. That's your qualifying lap. My peeve is that it's a bad driver can get a hot lap, right? So you got some guy who's all over the place coming out multiple times. He gets 5 actual complete laps in his allotted time. One of them is hot enough to be up with guys who are more consistently fast, right? So you end up with guys who got near enough the same fastest lap, but one of them could have only gotten 1 good lap in his minute of qualifying, whereas the rest of them could have gotten, multiple, stayed on the whole time even, right? what I would like to see, and I thought about this for a while. This is the only solution I could come up with, but basically, rather than the whole thing being fastest time from fastest to slowest, start with number of laps completed in that time period, and within that grouping of, like, say I got 10 laps in my allotted qualification time, right? Then everybody who also got 10 laps in their qualification time is ordered according to the fastest lap achieved, right? And then everybody who only got 9 laps in their qualification, and then the fastest of those, and so on and so forth. So you're still splitting things up based on fastest lap, but also rewarding consistency in driving. I don't know.
The only issue I would have with that in a 1 minute time frame is it puts too much of a, not emphasis, it's the wrong word, but too much, corner marshaling is too critical.
Corner
Bad
marshaling.
marshaling gets screwed.
Yeah.
Well, for
What
that,
I would think
for that,
about, what I think
Go ahead.
about, I like your idea. I like the way you're thinking. What about your qualifying time is your third fastest time?
Or an average or something. Third
Well,
fastest.
at the fray, you only get one shot and it's 3 laps. So if you have one off, you're really kind of screwed. But yeah, average of the top 3, or your third lap is your qualifier, your third fastest, you throw out the top 2 or something like that. And then that would take the marshaling.
I wouldn't use average, because then marshaling is important, but I think
Well,
median
average of
would
the
work
top
in that
3
place. If you took
Average of
the
your 3
median of those 10 laps, that way the guys who had the crazy one good lap for his median would still put him back to where he should be, and the faster guys on their medians would be up here. I think that would be an easy way the software could do it.
Yeah. Yeah. That way.
Because right now, because median's not perfect, but it's better than average, just because you take out the marshaling aspect and you just basically you get what's he capable of on a good lap, and that's what you're looking at. And then in Race Coordinator, you can use that as a tiebreaker for the previous race. So you have a heat race with median, it sorts it by the median, and then it puts the slower median guys together, and then the faster guys, median guys together, and then you can have the race format change to whatever you want from there. But top,
How do you
top.
how do you figure median again?
You take all the laps, all
middle.
10 laps, put slowest to fastest, and then find what's between 5 and 6. That number right there. So yes, you're gonna have a wildly good one and a wildly bad one, but it's eventually it's hoping to sort where your kind of good lap would be on a perfect lap. So
Yeah,
I'm running a 5.5. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's say your laps were 5 seconds, 6 seconds, and 20 seconds because you had an off. Median, your average, it will be way down because of that slow lap. Median, it takes the middle one, so your lap time would be 6.
Okay.
And it kind of disregards that one slow one, so it's the middle of the spread as opposed to an average of the spread.
Yeah, it's not perfect. I mean, nothing's gonna be perfect, but I think it's just a little more representative of how capable you are on your normal average lap. Whether like somebody didn't stop the track, if somebody stops the track, your average changes. But when you have a median, it stops once in the beginning. It doesn't affect you the whole race now because you've got the rest of your laps you can do good laps on, or bad laps in my case.
Yeah. So instead of rewarding the outlier hot lap,
yeah,
you're getting more of a representative in where the bell curve is that's where
yes.
your lap is.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, I like that better. Yeah, this absolutely comes from a place of feeling a little bit put out by my experience at the Nationals 2 years ago. Because I got put in a heat where this dude was all over the place, knocked me out specifically multiple times when I had nothing to do with getting. And one of the time I ended up on the floor, caused damage to the car, which basically just completely kicked me out of the running. I didn't even get in the top 12. Because the way it was arranged, pretty much every new group of 6 was going to end up in the top 12 for a little while, as the faster groups knocked them down. But I got knocked down so far because of that dude knocking me out. And
that's why we do the last chance qualifier at our bigger races. So everybody that didn't make the semi gets another full 18-minute run.
Yeah.
In a round robin format. So you get 2 chances. We can't get away from the guy hitting somebody, whether it's you or somebody else, but at least you have 2 chances to make the semi.
Here's another thing that software does that people don't seem to explore very much. It's kind of related to this, is that you can have 4 heats that you're racing on, all 4 lanes. But in software, usually it gives you an option to disregard your worst heat and take your 3 best. And it doesn't get explored very much, I don't think, but it's kind of nice because there are those heats where you get sorted with, like 3 of the noob guys, and they're crashing every other turn or they're taking people out, and you're like, oh my God. And then by the end of the race, that still counts against you. And there's not, even if you didn't take anybody out, you didn't do anything, but the track kept stopping or people kept crashing. When you have that option to, remove your worst heat and just take your top 3, I think it gives a little better representation of how well you are racing these days instead of just random chance. But again, people don't explore that often in their race formats.
We've got one track that the one lane is so slow compared to the others just because of the lane itself, that unless something strange happens, it would always be that lane you throw out.
Well, heat, but it might be. Like if everybody is slow on that heat, it just throws that out. But if there's a big crash on the other good lane, it doesn't mean you've lost the day, because you could still make it up with your 3 best. I don't know.
I mean,
there are options.
I would like to see that in practice, but I think that might be nice, especially with our the way we race crash and burn. Like Chris, who I took out, that knocked him pretty far down. If that would have been his dropout heat, and his overall would have been much better by dropping that out. And I probably wouldn't have changed much because I don't think I got out at all. Maybe once, but I didn't lose like the 10 laps that he lost from his early out. So yeah, we do have dropouts for the season, right? Our worst night gets dropped out. Not that changes a whole lot most of the time, but.
Well, the only reason I started thinking about this is because at our race on Sunday, the top driver bumped the second place guy in the race out, but he kept going. The first place guy kept going, and that second place driver then dropped down to 3rd. And I only know that because I got 2nd then because of it. And I was like, oh, that sucks for you, bro, but that worked out for me. But I was just thinking, how do you fix it? And I think the only way you do that is you take the best of the 3 instead of the one scratch one. But I don't know. Somebody else smarter than me will figure that one out.
I think in my experience, they're usually connected to people being not penalised for non-attendance.
Yeah, I mean that's basically what our season dropout is for.
Yeah, that's why you've got what you've got. Yeah, it won't penalise you if you've got something you need to do one other day. But I've never noticed it in competition formats, in actually the way you're actually going to compete.
Yeah, we were kind of talking about that earlier. We said this is more for like home racing and having fun. Like if you're going to a professional event, they're not going to use any. They're just going to who's the fastest. Or if you go to Courtney's house and you see him putting a beat down on his kids, you'll know, oh, this is just how it is. But when you're just having a friendly race, you want to have a little, you want to have it open to everybody and hope more people
friendly race.
Yeah.
That's an oxymoron, right?
That's the beauty of racing is it's not fair. If you want fair, play checkers.
That's why it's called a race.
Fair.
Courtney's
you learn lessons at Courtney's house.
Anti-handicapping guy here. And I understand that perspective, but at the same time, the guys who are winning all the time, you're still winning. Even if you take a handicap race, you're still probably going to be on the podium anyways. Just the other guys aren't that far behind. Or even if
you're getting the same amount of laps,
even if you don't land on the podium, inside you can tell yourself inside, well, it was just because of the handicap. I would have been just being nice to the newbies.
And you can still hold those race events.
At Sidewinder in Sacramento, And once the fast guys figure out how to do breakout racing, they would still always win. There was an
Let's
occasion.
stop real quick. Pause.
Yeah, once they figured out how to manipulate through driving the breakout, they're winning all the time too.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the fast guys are always going to, filter to the top no matter what. But
Yeah. The thing about racing when you're not the fast guy though, is that it's not a case of turn up and there's nothing to do because you know where you belong and that's where you shall stay. The objective is to get closer each time you go, if you can. Change your car, turn up again, see if you can get closer this time. And if you made the wrong change, you'll know, And there's still something to do, even though you're not winning. It's what I do. I don't win much. I go to
I
these
think you
big
got a
digital
good
races. I
point
don't
there.
win. I've won one. I think I've won one, but I
It,
still
it would
love.
be nice for a racetrack, and it's a lot of work for a racetrack to have records. You have the overall track record, whoever has it, but have personal records and put them up on the board. And when somebody runs a personal record in that class, give them recognition. Hey, driver X, he ran 3 laps faster in Group C than he's ever run before, so he gets, and do so. Some guys are never going to win, but to give them recognition.
You've hit the nail on the head. We in our WhatsApp chat with my team this week, we've actually had a small discussion about why people choose to race where they choose and why certain events seem successful and others don't. And recognition is a big part of the reward system for actually competing in the first place. Whether it's mentioned or otherwise, we all crave it because that's usually what we can achieve if there's anything to achieve. And that's why things like concours plays such a big part in events. Gio just loves his concours. He loves to do the light kits. He loves to do the paint jobs. And trust me, even though I'm a team member of his who only really wants to drive a fast car, a lot of his motivation is to turn up and turn out the best car, the concours. And we're so different in that respect. It's unbelievable, but we still compliment one another because of it, really. Because I help him to get the best performance out of the car, and he helps me produce the best car in terms of the light kit, body shell, etc., etc. And that's why we've continued to. I believe that's one of the aspects that's a reason, but that we've tried to continue. But recognition, and we're very intrigued by the way that slot car racing's becoming more and more spectatable in recent times. And that led me to the question I was going to bring to the group. I don't know if that one's closed at this time, but the question I was going to bring to the group tonight is who saw the WRE at the weekend?
I thought you were going to go there. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I did watch the award ceremony because I wanted to see who won because I wasn't watching the whole thing. And it struck me that they literally went through every single team
Exactly.
leading up to the
They
winners.
brought everyone
Hey,
up on stage.
every single one of them. This is team blah 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 from blah blah blah. They got this many laps, and thanks for coming, guys, and did a great time.
Every team got a recognition award, whether it was an award physically, and it was, but the recognition award that matters was the round of applause
Yeah.
from their co-competitors just for turning up. I mean, it's a big thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there was a certain amount of thing. I mean, I've never watched the WRE in the past as closely as I did this time, and I didn't watch it much. I dipped in and I dipped out. I dipped in for me 5 a.m. local time. The first thing I did in the morning was quick up. I wanted to look and see what the update was, where things had. I've got friends who were competing, Californian friends. I've got friends from Sweden also competing. I've got Brits competing. And didn't they do a great job, quite honestly? I mean, I race against those guys. I know those guys. And I can benchmark those guys to some extent. And I can kind of, for the first time, have a guess what might happen if we were to show up. Our Worldwide Slot Car chat team, us three and whoever else. It was great. I really enjoyed it. I don't know if anyone else watched, but if you missed it, you missed out on something that was getting on for being as good to watch as the Slotted Nationals are. And the reason is the same reason. There's somebody there talking about it.
Ian and Doug.
Ian and Doug. Yeah,
That's why I was watching. I watched the interviews that they did more than the racing.
absolutely.
They
Yeah,
did a great job.
the racing seemed to be kind of incidental. There's not actually all that much to look at when you're looking at 8 cars going around an 8-lane track. And there wasn't all that much coverage of that. I mean, it was on the most interesting parts were the talking parts, weren't they? And talking to the competitors.
Yeah, I loved him when they interviewed Paul Goromsky because I've raced with Paul quite a bit in the past.
I missed that personally, but I saw, everything I saw, I was interested in. Yeah, it didn't matter who they were talking to and what they were saying. I was interested. I was still interested to hear from everyone that had gone. I enjoyed it.
Can I share something in regards to what Jim said about recognition earlier? Let me pull this up, hopefully. Should be another spreadsheet. I know how you love spreadsheets and PowerPoints. So this is in Race Coordinator when you get your spreadsheet at the end of the race. This is like 19 races into our format, and this is our Group A slotted Group C. As long as your race always has the same name and then you have the same people's names over here, it tells you their fastest lap. So Russ has done a 5.4. My fastest lap is a 5.2, and that was on this day today. But what you're saying for recognition, it can be done. I assume other software has this ability too, but this tracks the history of all 19 races so far we've had at this guy's house. So you can always know, and then you can say, "Oh, hey, Jeremy, today you did a 4.20." That would be something we
A
can start
personal
looking
best.
at. If recognition kind of things are interesting, I would just think there should be ways to do this in the software to say, "Oh, you know what? I think that actually, never mind. I just gave myself an idea." Because in the software, in Race Coordinator, you can set personalized messages. So it would say, Jeremy set a personal best record in the red lane. And
Yes.
now everybody would go, "What was that?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, I did it." So I guess we could start doing that. You're right. Okay, I'm gonna start working on that.
It was a rider.
It was, yeah.
It was a rider.
Why you're treating
Yes,
me
you
like
could-
Courtney? What are you
Yes,
doing, Rose?
You could, Jeremy. There is only one aspect I would respond to that, and that is it's automated recognition doesn't carry anywhere near as much value as a person.
Correct. But
Or
right now,
people.
there's no way for the software to dump that information out and say who did what.
There is.
But this would be like, "Oh, Jeremy set that." I would jot that down, and at the end of the day, say, "Hey, we have a personal record here, Jeremy, blah blah blah, blah," or whoever. I mean, it can be done. It's just a lot more effort. And is that squeeze worth the juice? I guess I would have to figure that out.
We do have a racer at our boat town. His name is Ryder.
Ryder has a rider.
Yeah, that's his name.
So,
Is that a phone name?
Ryder, somebody's like Ryder, and he's like, "What?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I told his grandma who was there one day, goes, do you have another grandson? And his name is Track.
Marshall. He could have a son named Marshall.
Marshall named Marshall.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Imagine how pricked up his ears would stay.
There are people with nicknames of Red.
I missed that. Sorry, Jim.
Yeah, Jim.
There are people that use the nickname of Red.
Red. Yeah.
Red's in red lane. No, red's in yellow lane.
Who's on
What?
first?
Who's on first?
Speaking of recognition, one of the things that attracted me early on when I first started taking part in WRCC, whatever it is, saw Jim Rose there, and then shortly after that, there was a live broadcast from Electric Dreams, and Jim happened to be there, and that really connected me to that race. And another thing about Electric Dreams, when they do qualies, people recognize each other.
Yes, they do.
When somebody does a good run, people applaud for him and yell and hey, pat on the back and that kind of thing. And I think that's really, that kind of recognition is really good and probably going to be instrumental in keeping their crowds up and that kind of thing interested.
In event success.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, the connection it's the more people you know, the more connected you get with what you're watching. And you're right, just the fact that there are people that are in this chat that go to these larger events, whether they're well known or otherwise, for whatever reason, just gives everyone that knows them a reason to actually dip in and see if they can track their progress or just give them a shout out or whatever. It's just, yeah, I mean, it's really good. I love to watch people like Dewan do his qualifying run. He's got the place to himself, and I watch Dennis do the same, and it's just as interesting to me as watching, representative of a manufacturer. It could be Scale Auto, it could be NSR, it could be Michael Nemus or anybody like that. As much as watching the stars, I want to watch my mates.
Yeah, I don't know the stars any more than I know,
Yeah,
stars in any other game that I watch on TV. But I know these people.
yeah,
So I feel like I do. I
yeah,
feel
yeah.
like I have a connection to, and that's really cool. It's really stimulating.
The only complaint I had about Ian and Doug's emceeing was either the audio guy didn't know what he was doing, or Ian just couldn't pull the microphone away from his mouth far enough. But it was always way overdriven. He was always
It was
yelling,
terrible.
and it was just
It wasn't perfection. Yeah, it was difficult. Yeah, it wasn't perfection. It didn't. Was it the first time they've ever done a 24-hour feed on the race? If I'm not mistaken, I think it might be.
yeah. But
Pretty sure it was.
I don't think it was really Ian, and I don't think it was there.
No.
It was the microphone. So they've broadcast the 24, just not with live commentary like that, I don't think.
Oh, okay.
Because they've
Well,
definitely,
It looked like NSR was trying to emulate what they did on Electric Dreams. Obviously, they had the same people there.
yeah,
Yeah, Marco, I'm sure, had a little bit to do with that.
Yeah,
probably, yeah.
he did.
But,
They're going to be in 24 hours. There are going to be technical issues, even with the kind of equipment we have available to
But it was constant.
video games. Well, yeah. Well, that's quality control.
Yeah.
So, what do we make of the fact that there's two areas we could also go. We could touch on the regulations, but that's a tad harder because not all of us will know as much about the regulations as myself and a couple of other people in the chat do. But what about the fact that the light kits didn't work well? What do we make of that?
for that, and there were a lot of complaints about the motors too.
Yeah, that's another.
Who
Yeah,
supplied
you're
the light
right.
kit? Was it a supplied light kit, or you brought your own?
No, it was a supplied and it was mandatory. It
Who's
wasn't
the manufacturer?
supplied. It was a part number that you must use.
Well, what brand?
NSR.
It was an NSR.
Okay. Well, I guess that's research and development that I'll have to look at, I guess.
They've already. They
NSR
said,
was doing the research and development.
no, actually, they did say during the race it got mentioned a couple of times that it will get looked at, but because it was a problem of enough significance, they broke their own rules, or they applied a hastily mixed, solution, and everyone in the room is going to accept that by and large. Although it did throw up some interesting scenarios, insofar as some cars were running through the night without lights, and that was the regulation they changed. They were like, you must run your lights through the night. Well, some teams ran them for 24 hour. Some teams only switched them on at night. A lot of teams had problems with them, and some cars apparently, and I haven't got a clue why this would be the case, but when their motors went faster when their lights were off.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Why would that happen? Anyone got enough electrical? I mean,
Less
Only if
resistance,
they're
something to do with the
power supply.
resistance.
They don't draw enough current to really shouldn't make a big deal of it at all.
this is true.
Unless they were running some sort of oversized capacitor or something like that to power the lights when the car was off the track. But then there would have to be some sort of leak down or something.
Their power supply would have to be insufficient for their lane to not be able to power the car and charge the lights at the same time. Because that's amperage, right?
That could
So
be
Yeah.
a possibility.
Well, bearing in mind it's analog and not digital, there is a difference. There's not a constant source of power to the light kit. When you're on the brakes, there is no power to the light kit unless the motor's turning, which it is, because the motor turning itself can generate the power required for the lights. So even light kits that go out when you deslot stay lit, even though you're not supplying power to the rails with your finger. But because they've got the capacitor on board on the light kit chip, that negates the requirement even for the wheels to be turning. So there's always power there, one way or of Y to 3. There's always power.
But in theory, at least that should be the same for everybody.
it should have been, yeah.
But I heard more than one complaint about there's a huge disparity in the motors.
Is that what it
Yeah.
was?
Well, no, this has nothing to do with the light kits, but
No, yeah, the separate thing about motors that you mentioned.
yeah, there's like a half a second difference a lap in going from one motor to another.
Oh, wow.
And that wasn't wear and tear, was it? Or it wasn't all wear and tear.
I wonder if the cars, when they had their lights on, they felt like, here's how fast I'm going. And when the kit finally died, it felt like it was a little faster then to them, because maybe when the lights were working, it was drawing something weird, like a fault or something was preventing them from getting full RPM, and it just felt normal until it died.
Well, one would presume something like that must have happened, yes. I mean, if there was a fault in the light kit and it caused a minor short circuit across the motor or a short circuit across the braids, then yeah, that would be robbing power, and only some of the power would get to the motor. But there's such a low, if it's working properly, a light kit, there's such a low current from the LEDs, they should make no discernible difference.
Unless they were bad, like if something was bad in the kit that was installed.
Yeah.
Well, if the complaint was actually supported by lap times or something like that, I could see how one might slow down when you don't have your lights all of a sudden. But it could also be kind of an illusion, like the locomotive that's coming at you. It doesn't look like it's going very fast until it gets there, and then it's really going fast.
I think there were enough people who knew what they were doing. I mean, the lap times were constantly updating. Every lap there was a lap time that one could view. I believe that might have been on a network system so that you could run your own tablet or look at it on your phone. Don't quote me on that, but it was certainly being broadcast anyway. So anyone following the YouTube feed would have seen the lap times. Maybe they would have been a lap old or something by that time, but they were there. And there were enough individuals there of enough quality to know, even if you suddenly come out of a corner and the car feels different because the lights are off, you would know just as the driver, you would pick it up pretty quickly. I'd heard from an individual who was there who said our motor's not great, and there was a regulation so that they could only have one in the car and one in the spare box. So I'm not sure whether there were teams who went through more than two. I'm not aware of any teams that went through more than two, but there were several occurrences of motors being swapped. So they didn't.
You know what's going to happen next year?
No, I know.
This is just speculation on my part. I have no knowledge whatsoever.
Okay.
But Maurizio was there, and he had something to do with it because they're using his track.
Yeah.
Slotted is coming out with a brushless motor. We've seen it. We know it.
Yeah.
I could see that race being with slotted motors next year.
Even though it's an SR race with slotted motors in there?
The motors, I could see that happening.
An NSR race with slotted motors in there?
Why not? If it makes for a better race.
I mean, I can understand the track because there is no NSR track. That makes complete sense.
That's obvious.
Didn't NSR come out with brushless motors?
Not for these kind of cars.
Oh, okay.
They're
I think it's more likely that they'll come out. I think it's more likely they'll come out with brushless motors for these cars than use slotted brushless motors.
There could be, but I could see with all the complaints, I could see that happening.
Well, I
And
mean,
maybe the complaints were just the few people that I talked to, that maybe they didn't, maybe they were right or wrong, who knows?
you've
I,
seen the
I'm not.
RC industry, that all went to brushless eventually. And
I mean,
it might be that we're on the first rung of the same ladder.
to make that investment, especially from the US teams because of the travel, and all teams actually because of the travel, and to have your race theoretically ruined because you've got two bad motors out of a blind draw, that would totally turn me off if all what we're hearing is true.
Well, we regularly race under a set of regulations we know well, and we took a look at the regulations for that race, and we pretty unanimously agreed that there are some weaknesses in that regulation set, and it wasn't around translation, because I know there had to be regulations in multiple languages. It wasn't around translation. The translation was phenomenal. It was perfect English everywhere. But just the core of the regulations, it's like some things were implied rather than specific, and some things that would have been happening were actually illegal, because the regulations had a catch-all on the end that said if it's not written above, it's not legal. And there was no provision in the regulations for even oiling your motor bushers or your axle bushers. And there's no doubt that those cars got oil, but that wasn't actually legal. So the regulation set was something that you could poke holes in quite easily.
I'm not an electronics person. As I've said, I know what things should do, but I have no idea how they do them. But I'm trying to think of any reason that the lights on a car not working would give the car more power. And the only thing I can think of is if the lights were being powered in series with the motor, like it was part of the circuit. So braid, light chip, motor, light chip, braid is the circuit. Then tolerance differences or failures of components and things on the light chip would absolutely affect the top speed of the motor. But that would be the stupidest thing in the world to do, because assuming that somebody was stupid enough to do that, you wouldn't have any brakes, or your brakes would be messed up, right? Because any resistance introduced would reduce your braking strength.
That would be like an old Christmas tree.
No,
string.
the lighting,
the whole string goes out.
That too, yeah. If the wrong component broke, it would kill the car, right? So there's no way it was wired in series. It would have to be parallel, which means that the functionality of the light board should not have played any role in the speed the motor was getting.
Yeah.
Unless there was some situation that caused the power to that lane being anemic enough that it just did.
The light kit was
little bit
drawing
of power sapping for the lights was enough to change the speed of the motor.
Yeah.
But that would be like putting a 1 amp power supply per lane. I mean, come on.
I don't know I don't know. I don't know anybody that knows what they actually had.
They would not. It's inconceivable that they would do something like that.
Yeah. I mean, would there have been one power supply per lane, or would there have been one power supply for 8?
I mean, either way, but you would make sure that there's plenty of headroom, regardless.
Yeah.
I mean, but even so, the amperage that those lights pull is so minuscule. I can't imagine that would.
Yeah. Apparently, they're not actually manufactured in NSR's factory, the light kit. So it's an outsourced product, and it's one of very, very few outsourced products that NSR even brand. And I believe that the solution that might be proposed is to bring it in-house, because NSR's history with that is that the best way to produce anything is in-house. That's their MO. It's their,
No, they just assemble in-house.
No, they mold everything.
They injection mold in Italy.
They paint everything. They decal everything. It's all manufactured at NSR when you buy NSR.
The only thing that's not are the motors, right, Wayne?
I can't say the only thing, but the majority of what they do is in-house.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's one of their strengths. It's one of their, they've got complete control of
They've shown
what they
pictures of
put out.
cars coming off the injection molding and all, in bins and, all that stuff.
I would imagine a motor would come. Yeah, I think you're right, Jim. A motor, it seems nonsensical to start manufacturing those motors when they are so readily available to order. Yeah, I think the motor is likely not to be in-house. So that blows that. But yeah, everything else I think is.
Yeah, but doing PCBs is not something that you want to do on a lark, right? If they're planning to do large numbers of PCBs for light kits and stuff, then that's another expensive machine. Maybe they will eventually. Would that be the only
Well, there's more
electronic?
than one way to manufacture, isn't there? I mean, you can order PCBs, you can make a design and order them and have them come. They are normally 100% perfect. And, the failure rate on a PCB itself. Then you've got the task of populating it and finishing the assembly. And the lowest grade way of doing that is literally to put a man on a desk with all the parts around him and,
No,
and then hand build them.
These days they got machines.
Yeah, but you wouldn't invest in the machine if all you sold was 200 a year.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, but
Yeah.
but like you said, you can order the PCBs. You can order them populated.
It's that simple these days.
Oh yeah. You see the ads on various YouTube videos for JLPCB. And
Oh
PCB
yeah, you do.
stuff like that. Yeah, you can literally send the full electronic schematic with all the components on there, and they will send you back a fully populated board.
Right.
For these days, cheap compared to what it used to be like.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can get companies like that could get a pick and place PCB manufacturing machine, not have a guy sitting there soldering everything on. Is the light kit? Do they make any other circuit boards?
Electronics. I don't know.
I don't know of any. So it would be silly for them to do it just for that one thing.
Unless they're thinking about building boards for brushless motors in the future.
I was going to say, if they start getting...
that's the component they do make. They do brand, isn't it? I doubt they make that. I don't know. I can't speak, but it's possible that it's highly likely they probably don't make that board as well.
No, but if in the future there's not enough market for that $400 Eurosport motor, even though it's a great motor. But if they're thinking long term, like in 5 years that all of our NSR cars are going to have brushless motors in them, because it'll be cheap enough, then they could conceivably be thinking about doing a manufacturing in house.
Yeah, especially if they continue
enough volume for it.
Yeah, especially if they do the light boards and they add a brushless motor controller board, and maybe they'll start doing digital.
that could all be one thing, yeah.
Brushless motors would probably be much easier to assemble, to manufacture, than conventional brush motors.
Think so.
There is a circuit board and there are electronics in the brushless motor. I think the manufacturing of brushed motors is so widespread and so cheap, and brushless, even though they're also widespread and getting cheaper. They're cheap. They are just as cheap as brushed.
Yeah. Thanks, John. We know.
That's a brushed motor in that, surely. Anyway,
brush.
It's a brush. So, what was I saying? I don't think there'll be a hell of a lot difference between the difference in cost will not be in the motor. It'll be the circuit board that runs it.
Yeah.
Because the motors they run are tiny, and they're making them. Traditionally, they made them for quadcopters, and they all run a bit too fast for slot cars. But they've solved that now. They've got dedicated slot car RPM ranges. I mean, DoSlot. I saw an ad from DoSlot on Facebook today, and in the beginning, if you remember, Henry would come on here and he would say, "I've got the 25K version, and it's just lightning quick and just uncontrollable, and yet the circuit can handle it, The power supplies can handle it. The controller can control it. Everything's there. I just want a slower motor. Well, now they've got a whole range of motors that sit underneath the ones that Henry was initially trying.
Yeah.
It's definitely here. It's not mainstream, but it's definitely here.
Oh, it's here. Yeah. I'm looking forward to having a go at it someday.
I still don't think it makes a whole lot of sense for most people for 1/32nd.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
It's a high level competition like the WRE, where people have invested a lot of time, a lot of money just to get there, and then be let down by a brushed motor that cost 50 cents.
Yeah, 50 cents to
I
make.
think a company like Carrera could do it. They could build a brushless motor, and they already have a circuit board in their car for other stuff, and build a circuit board to do everything they want it to do. Power the motor, or control the motor, control the lights, this, that, and that. And they could do it.
Well, I mean, look at Slotted is an electronics company at the core. We all know that they manufacture ECUs for Lanciers and other stuff. But so their Type C chip, their Type B chip, they've got a long history in doing electronics like that. And that, I would imagine, it's not a large leap for them to have produced their incoming brushless motor kit.
But you notice in their announcement, they're not talking about a chip at all. It's just strictly the motor and using current available chips.
Oh, is it? It's just a motor.
Yeah, and they like you said, they perfectly have the capability and the knowledge to produce that, but apparently they're not. They're just going to do the motor right now.
Well, I can imagine that a good reason for that would be that their manpower. I don't know what their manpower is, but their slot car arm is not big. It's 6 or 7 people or something like that, I think, probably.
If even.
Well,
Yeah,
honestly, when I saw the ad for the slotted brushless motor, I'm like, my first reaction was, well, just sell the bracket. Because half of the advertising was for the bracket that they designed to put a brushless motor into their normal pod. Right?
Yeah.
That was the breakthrough, really, was the little anodized aluminum bracket.
Well, there's so many slotted pods out there. You want the backward compatibility, don't you? You don't want to have to dedicate your car to being brushless, and buy a pod as well as your motor.
And it could be exactly what you say, that they've just built that bracket and they've sourced a motor and they're going to package it and sell it as a slotted product, which obviously it is, but it may not be a quote slotted motor at all, just something they're sourcing.
Yeah, no doubt.
Same as for their brush motors. They don't make their own motor.
No.
Yeah.
I don't know what they make. If you think about a way that what we know about slotted, I don't actually know whether they make anything in-house. It's quite the reverse.
Well, when Rick Joachim went over to Italy, he asked Maurizio, "Can we come and visit?" He goes, "Sure, if you want just to see business on it."
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And NSR is a totally different thing. That's a complete manufacturing. So
there's a recent video I've seen on YouTube, and I didn't watch it, about an NSR factory visit. Did anyone catch that? No.
I think I watched it.
It's probably come up again on my feed, I hope. I might watch that.
For a product that's as important as the PCBs in some of these cars, particularly if you're going to base your entire product line on a brushless motor series or something like that, surely there are companies in Europe that can produce those PCBs in a competitive way when you consider failure rates and all that stuff with the Chinese made ones. Surely there are companies in Europe that they could contract with to produce those things.
Not as cheap as China.
Oh no, not as cheap as China, but like
That's
I
the
said,
main thing.
when you consider the failure rates and problems, how long it takes to produce what they want to do, what they want to get in the product from China. Then they have, oh, we got to change it. It's not right. This is not right. That's not right. Blah blah blah. It might be better. I'm not going to say cheaper. It might be better to have it done in Europe if you could get it.
I don't think that's more true of China than any other manufacturing situation. I mean, there's always going to be design updates and changes, and you know, the manufacturer bringing a product over and saying, here, is this good enough? And then the person saying, no, that's not good enough. You need to change this, that, and the other thing. That's always a balancing act between the company that's contracting the manufacturer and the manufacturer, and you know, what is the level of quality that the company is willing to accept for the price point that they're trying to sell it at, right? So yeah, you can absolutely, you can demand a higher level of quality and consistency from a Chinese company too, and you'll pay for it.
What was it? MR Slot Car's been going through that with this new company that they have that's producing their new line of cars.
Yeah, good example.
You know, it might end up putting them out of business because they can't get it right.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, I think, like what Greg said, you can get a higher quality product, but at some point it's cheaper to sell 1,000 of them and take 20% back in returns than it is to pay more and you get them so they're 100% right. Just reality.
I mean, the exact same level of quality and consistency from China as compared to the same level of quality and consistency from someplace in Italy that can do the exact same thing, right? So you get the same exact product, the same amount of bad versus good and everything, right? Going to be cheaper in China.
Still.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I believe that's why the moldings are done out there. I mean, it's Scale Extric, classic example. All their moldings are done elsewhere. They don't they don't have the factory in the UK like they used to do. I believe Slotit's all manufactured out there too. But there must be a very good relationship.
You look at the new Carrera some of the new Carrera models are just phenomenal. The quality of the body, graphics and finish and everything is pretty amazing. To me.
I haven't handled a lot of Carrera, certainly not recent ones, but I see it.
Yeah, I agree that the 296 I've got is an example of that. It's quite good.
I have one of those also, one of the red ones, and it really came to my attention when I got this thing. Get to it here.
Did they recently change their manufacturer or anything, or move manufacturing?
Oh no.
No, just they've.
Where does it say "made in" on the bottom of a Carrera car?
Pretty sure it does.
This new series of NASCAR models, that thing is really, really nice. I've never had an NSR or a Thunder Slot, or not to mention Michael Nemus or something like that, but the finish on this thing is just really, really nice.
That'll be Chinese made. It won't be German made, will it?
No. There's no way they can get the prices they're charging for that stuff.
Oh no!
Yeah, it's $40
like
for
$40
a car.
Yeah.
You know,
it's incredible.
Wasn't the digital version and all that, but it was only $40.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Speaking of electronics in slot cars, how unreliable are Carrera digital chips? And
pretty reliable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I interrupt for just a second?
Yeah.
This just came across my Facebook feed. So, Dwan, if you're out there, we're thinking about you. Apparently,
Get well
some complications with the knee surgery. So.
Oh gosh, he's in knee trouble then.
Yeah, it just came across a few minutes ago. So, Dwan, if you're out there, we're thinking about you.
I thought he was doing really well with that.
He's probably watching us, or will.
So he is.
If you read the copy, he said he woke up a couple nights ago and he couldn't move his knee, so he's back to figure out what's going on. So that's why I broke in on that. Sorry.
Yeah, I saw Jeremy's comment. I was going to mention it towards the end of the chat. Either way, get well soon, Dwan.
That ended it, didn't it?
That might be the end of the chat right there. I feel like I had some other comment that I was going to make, but
that need better so you can qualify because people want to watch you.
Yeah.
Hold on. Since when do you need a knee to drive a slot car?
Ah, exactly.
Chop it off. You'll be fine. Get it out of there. It makes them
As long
awesome.
as-
The thing that Maurizio was working with was that gentleman who
The tone controller.
you know, the tongue controller. Yeah, that was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I think that's for a different channel, boys. Sorry.
Wonder how he deals with the saliva production there.
I'm sure it's a waterproof button for him to
Wear a napkin. Wear a napkin.
It's just pretty
Yeah.
amazing what they're able to do, what Maurizio is able to do with that stuff.
Hey, if you were a trumpet player, you'd be unstoppable.
At what point do you think a race like the WRE? I mean, I look at those 4 layouts with the 8 lanes, and I had 32 cars, 32 racers. Okay, so the oxygen system can't handle that. But at what point do they discover that you don't need 8 lanes, and they actually just put digital tracks? Everybody, I mean, I was intrigued by the comments that I saw that said the tracks are big, because for me, they weren't. The straights were not long. They're so formulaic in the layout. It was like straight corner, straight corner, straight corner, oh, corner, and a tiny straight and a corner. But it was all just straight corner. There was no corners into corners.
Yeah.
I was like, no, obviously you're using all 8 lanes. That's the capacity of the system. There might be 10. But to have all the track pieces, or to vary the radius, nothing varied in radius.
Yeah.
And it's like, is that actually good? Is that nice? What's that like? I've never driven like that. I've never driven circuits like that.
Tracks don't have to be complicated to be fun or competitive.
I don't, yeah, I'm not, it's not a complaint. It's an observation more than a complaint. It's so different to everything. I was looking at it and thinking, I've never actually driven a circuit like that, because all the big tracks that I ever use are varied, and normally a maximum of 4 lanes, except with that one exception of Suzuka, which is 6, but normally 4. And it's like we've got the run of the track system to change to vary the layouts, and compound radius corners and opening corners and all of that, and none of that was there in the WRE race.
No.
And I thought, does that make those tracks easy to learn?
I think the reason is you hit the nail on the head. That's essentially a 1-lane track, because you can only do so much when you have 4 track pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4 radii. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're limited in what you can do. If it was a 2-lane track, they could do anything they want.
Anything, yeah, they could do tracks like We Race.
Or
Yeah.
4-lane. When they go 8 lanes, you're limited because of the track pieces.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure they weren't using any R1 turns, so they're basically 2, 3, 4, 5
Were they?
for every turn.
Oh, so that was a 2. The tightest turn was a 2.
I'd have to go back in to look, but I didn't see anything that looked like an R1 turn.
I would think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
They were
Versus-
hitting them like R1s. They were
I mean,
hitting.
Every turn is the same. Inside is an R2, outside is an R5, right? 2, 3,
Yeah.
2, 5.
Yeah.
So every corner is symmetrical, and that's all they can do.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, look at, oh, no, there's a couple R1s.
The inside of the inside was R1, was it? I thought it had to be 1, 2, 3, and 4 then. So maybe they did have. There are R5s in the system, are there not?
I believe so.
Maybe they did have some variety then. You are screen sharing a video, yeah.
So I think this turn right here is R1 on the inside. It might be R2 though. It's not a whole lot of turn.
Okay, can you pause?
Definitely R2 on the inside.
Can you pause, Greg?
Yeah, hold on. There we go.
Look at the top of the video. There's the U shape coming towards up there. That has to be R2 into R1. Do you agree?
So this is R2, or this right here is 2 into 1?
No, that I think is a 2, and the next corner is a 1.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's super tight right there. So yeah, that's definitely an R1.
Even on the lane how you were pointing at where the R2 was.
Could be.
Follow
right
it to
there.
the left. I think that might be R1.
Yeah.
Was that Scale Auto
This
No.
is Polycar.
Polycar.
or Polycar? Yeah, okay.
These are definitely R2s in front of the gentleman in the seat.
Yeah, right here.
And they don't look anywhere near as sharp as the two at the bottom of the picture that we looked at first.
Yeah, the one at the very top is for sure R1.
R1. So they were using 5 corner radii and getting 4 2-lane tracks out of it, or 8 lanes.
Yeah. So they have 2 different turns they can do. They can do
Yeah, you only have 2.
Yeah.
a sharp one with 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a not so sharp one with 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah. So they did take advantage of the system then as much as they could.
Yeah.
They would have had R6, but Greg wouldn't build them for them.
Couldn't print them in time.
Didn't have time to print as many as they needed.
They only needed 1,000, Greg.
Yeah.
That's funny.
All right. Seems like you guys are done chatting live, so I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. And until next week, everybody, bye. Ending the stream. Doop-a-doop-a-doop. Says it's over. Give it another 10 seconds before you swear.
Damn.